Hey, Ron, welcome back to the show. Give us a little update on yourself.
Hey Brian, thanks for having me. My name's Ron Massey. I was on the show, maybe it was like 2 years ago now, if I'm remembering right.
It's been
Feels
a
like
while.
yesterday. Yeah, it's been a little while, but yeah, a lot has gone on. So when we last talked, I was just starting to get up and running really with some of the stuff that you're teaching in terms of the courses. I might have been one of the first beta
I think you were.
customers, whatever you want to call us, in 2017 for Get the Meeting. Really you know grasped onto that whole methodology, if you want to call it that, and how to think different, because it really was a mind shift for me. And I remember struggling through it on a lot of one-on-ones with you, trying to shift my mind from the traditional way that we've been
Pitch.
taught.
Yeah.
Pitch, it's about us, our product, our features, our functions, and then move myself over to thinking more about them and what are they going through. And a big piece of that for me has been to really start to understand the personal wins that people have, not a
Yeah.
persona, but the personal wins. And but that was a huge mind shift that I had to go through, and just being able to work through that. So um, I was at a SaaS-based company here in San Diego that was selling. I was selling enterprise analytics and consulting services, and about a month ago, I just shifted over to a new company here, headquartered out of San Diego. I needed a new challenge. I needed something refreshing.
Yeah.
And it excited me about what they were doing. So it became less about where I was coming from and more about the opportunity that I saw ahead,
Yeah.
and where the space was going.
And what motivated you? You just needed, a new opportunity, a little bit more upside, or
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of things were motivating me. I started feeling like my vision for where I wanted to go was starting to not really align the way that I felt that it should and where I was. And I'd been there for 5 years. It was a great run, and I loved it. And I'll forever be grateful for them. They gave me my opportunity in SaaS, coming from commercial printing before that into this technology SaaS world. This is where I really wanted to be. But I wanted to be somewhere where we were focused on a different problem that we were trying to solve, something that I felt fit my skill set better over what I've developed with your coaching and the Get the Meeting and a complex sale. And then through the network that I had built, other coaches that I've reached out to, people that I've met, and bringing all this together, being able to go take a new space and go start to transform the way that companies talk to each other, communicate at C-suite level, and then bring that down into the field and into the marketing. And I just really love where the company is going, and what we're doing.
yeah. And I've kind of seen you evolve as a salesperson. How do you feel about it? Do you feel more confident? Do you feel more like you understand how it gets done?
Yeah, like I said, absolutely. I've evolved a ton over the last 5 years, and really since 2017. And I think a big part of that was really letting go of this idea that just the people within your org or your company are the
Yeah.
ones that know how to execute or sell.
Yeah.
And so when you put out your classes, that really opened my mind up to how can I start to get better and start to get coached. And I need to be open to being coached, and then take it, make it my own, and come try it, and then come back and say, where else can we improve?
Yeah.
And I've done that with you, and I've done that with a few other coaches that I have in sales. And then just opening up my network to other reps in other industries, or other people in other industries, to start to learn more. And sometimes I might even lead with some of that, where I'm just trying to learn or understand, not about what their business does, or what's going on from a work perspective necessarily, because you can learn a lot of that by doing your research. But what's really motivating that person on the other side of the desk that you're trying to talk to, or
Yeah.
what's going on with them? And I've grown a lot, and I've gotten way more curious than I ever was before. And I think that has been a huge piece of it.
Yeah. Were you not curious before? Because you are very coachable. You ask for help. You're conversational. You don't worry about your ego
Mhm.
or being not perfect, right?
Yeah, I checked all that at the door when I knew I needed to make a change, because what I was doing wasn't working the way that I wanted it to work. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff behind that, from uh, you get into sales to make money. I think besides being like a professional athlete or a lawyer, a big corporate lawyer or something, sales can run in that same type of
It
arena
does. Yeah.
if you want to make that type of money, have that type of lifestyle, right? Sometimes I see you posting stuff about an old show that my wife and I love, Suits with Harvey Specter. I like life up here. And so we want to get up there, right? And this is this is the career path that we chose to go there. There is no ceilings. I can take it where I want. I can manage it how I want. And I love that. Was I always curious, to go back to your question? I think I thought I was,
Yeah.
but I wasn't really, I guess I wasn't curious with a purpose, if that makes sense. Now I'm really curious with a purpose.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
what's motivating the financial requirement is you're single, you go out partying every night, you
No,
got a
no,
small drug habit that you're overcoming.
no. First of all, we live in Southern California in San Diego, so that's a motivation there. Number two, it's my family, my wife and my two kids, and you think forward on school, and my
College.
daughter's going to go to kindergarten, and now we got to start paying for that, and we're paying for preschool, and so it's just a lot of little life, like life things that a lot of us all deal with and probably motivate us. But when you really, when I step back and think about it, it's really like, what kind of life do we all want to have?
Yeah.
And it's about just us as a family, right? We want to go on family vacation and do stuff like that and not have to worry about it. And I want my wife to be able to decide if she wants to stay home or if she wants to work or whatever she wants to do. So we have that flexibility. Excuse me. Luckily.
Yeah, and I think a lot of salespeople kind of push that aside, and I think we should just be honest about it. I mean, that's why I went into it. If engineering paid the same, I would have
Hmm.
stayed. You know, I didn't have a passion for sales. I do now. It evolved.
Yeah.
Once I became good at it, and you saw a high correlation between effort and reward, which takes time, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I don't think that I've developed a much deeper passion for it over the past 5 years. And especially over, like we said, the last three, I've almost become sort of a sales junkie, if you will. I
Yeah,
love it. I love talking about it. I love talking to people about it. And I even feel like a lot of sales dips into marketing in a way. So I love talking about customer experience and marketing attribution, and how are you actually using these things to be smarter in the way that you're going to market, and how does that affect the C-suite and then as you push down. And so really getting in and learning all of this and being able to surgically understand what companies are doing, what their initiatives are, imperatives. And that's great. You can put all that down on paper in a beautiful little account plan. But if you can't go execute and, like we always talk about, get the meeting, then it doesn't matter, right?
right.
So, um, but so it's become really like a passion for me, to be honest, and I love it.
And that's kind of we have that in common because I from the very beginning studied it like I studied a science.
Hmm.
But then you very quickly, you apply the science, then you find out how much art there is to it, right?
Yes,
You know?
yeah, it's definitely a fine line there where they cross over an art and a science,
Yeah.
and I've
Now,
had to learn that.
you studied supply chain. That's pretty exciting, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it was super exciting. No, no, but I will tell you, I was thinking about this the other day. I learned a lot in supply chain about process,
Yeah.
about how to go from A to B quickly, like a lot of things. And so I know people sometimes will say, "Oh, I have a degree and I'm doing nothing with my degree." Now it depends on what you got a degree in, I suppose, but some of the principles that I learned there, I feel are rooted in how I execute,
Yeah.
because I'm process oriented, I'm strategic. I'm always looking for what path makes the most sense at the time. I'm 3 or 4 or 5 steps ahead, or at least I try to be, right? And some of that was baked into me when I was in college, learning about the ins and outs of running a supply chain at
Right.
a big company. Hmm.
And that does apply, especially to the complex sale, because most reps are barely thinking about the next step, never mind 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Yeah, and that has been a key thing for me, is to be able to be in a meeting and understand from a really big picture, where are we trying to drive them? what's going to be the uh, transformational experience that they're going to have with us, if you will. And then how do we back that down into smaller micro wins and micro steps along the way and almost plot out where we need to go? Now, does it go to plan every time? Absolutely not. But at least I know where we're going. So, and I'm going to refer to one of the things that you teach us, the map to money, right? Like, how do we understand where we're going before we even start? So I can envision if I'm in a meeting with a prospect or a customer, okay, I already know 2 or 3 next meetings we can have, and I'm lining them up in my head as we're talking. And
Yeah.
they're kind of like shuffling or moving around during the conversation because I've done a lot of prep because we spend a lot of time to get a meeting. And then you hear people, did you do a call plan? Did you think about who's going to say what in the meeting? And usually the answer is we did not.
Yeah.
And I really grabbed a hold of that and said, I will literally almost script the meeting out to the minute on who's talking when, so we keep that direction, momentum, and control. And that has been very powerful for me.
That's it. Because when I started in sales as a kind of a sales engineer, I always assumed we'd leave and they would send the order in the next day. And that didn't happen when I became a rep. Has that happened often?
That's never, I wish. I mean, back in the day, I remember when I first started getting into sales, when I was selling commercial printing way long ago, people's phones would ring. I was
Yeah.
like, well, I want to be in that department. So that's kind of how that happened.
Answering them is better than calling them, dialing them.
Yeah, and they were all the time. They were just doing this, and and then the world changed. Um, when I finally moved into that department, the phone wasn't ringing anymore.
Yeah.
It was there was nobody calling you. So no, that didn't happen. So we had to get a lot smarter, and it was a journey for me.
Yeah. And when you were at a company for 5 years, I bet you saw a lot of different types of salespeople. Did you have
Mhm.
mentors and anti-mentors there?
I
People.
did. I had a few mentors, and I had one mentor in particular that kind of took me under his wing, and he helped me understand how to actually strategize and then execute, but to do that from a way to think really big. Like, do not be afraid to go into a customer with a big number. If you can back it up based on the value that you're driving, or you can have that discussion, right? Because we've guided them into that, and we know what our value is and where we can take their business from a business standpoint. Don't be afraid of that. And that was another mind shift change that I had to have, was going from thinking maybe smaller or
Transaction.
transactional to an
Yeah.
extent, because it wasn't a transactional sale. But if you're selling, a $2 million renewal, okay, but where's the 10, 15, $25 million that could actually turn into, or 50 million that could turn into? Or is there another business unit that you're doing nothing with that you can go help transform and go in with a big idea, and then that story becomes the story to tell to the rest of the organization? So he really taught me how to think like this, and then how to run a complex sale, like help run the team or help get
Yeah.
into who does what and how. Because usually when you're doing what I'm doing, you have a team with you.
Yeah.
And it that was huge. So couple that, being able to think a lot bigger, and then not just think about it, but how you actually do it, and then couple that with all the other stuff. Um, that's when I felt like I was really starting to turn here and understand where I can go and my potential.
And where do you see yourself taking your career? What skills do you want to develop? What abilities? Where do you want to go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I like being an individual contributor, if that's how you want to classify being an account executive. I don't really have too much of a desire to go into any type of management or anything. It's just not where I really see myself being. But what now long-term vision, if we're going to talk about like big things, I would love to be part or run, like, let's call it like an incubation center, or like an innovation piece within a sales department that goes out and takes these moonshots,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do we go? Because not everybody can chase a big deal within an organization. You can't. You need those micro wins. You need all of that stuff. And you have to develop a certain type of skill set to believe that you can go out and try and do these bigger deals. And you have to have a roadmap, and some of the complex sales stuff that you've put in your courses. I've taken that, and I've gone and and really studied and learned about mega deals from a few folks, some that have been on your podcast way long ago, connecting with those people, my mentor. So, and I've learned that not everybody can do that. And you've got to be coached. And I'm still trying to get better at that, right?
Yeah.
As I do the other stuff as well. So it's kind of in parallel with it until I can get really good at the bigger ones. But I would like to see maybe some kind of within an organization. I think of like a Google, for example. They have incubation centers that are working on different futuristic things. So why not bring that model into a sales org and have a team that's developing that for you? I would love to be part of that. And because a lot of that's too part of my network that I've created, being able to leverage, Brian, can you come in and do a 1-day session with us? And this is where we are. Or somebody else, can you come in and help guide us through some of this? And because people don't reach out like that in my experience.
No, people usually work their network out of need, not out of building, out of giving.
Hmm.
And when it's a need, it comes across as desperate and selfish instead of generous and friendly.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a big vision that I have, right? And I've always kind of had it away, but it's something that I can strive for. So it gives me some purpose in the sales in my career. And that's what I feel like it gives me, aside from the family stuff that we talked about. Right. And then
Well,
every day I'm trying to just get better, right? Like I want to get better at asking the right questions or leading prospects or leading conversations a little bit better. I'm always trying to sharpen my acumen, my business acumen, and tailor it to what problems we solve. And all the time I'm trying to do that.
yeah, because doing big deals is exciting.
Yeah, well, it's adrenaline rush. Hmm.
Yeah, especially when they're pure outbound, where there was, you don't have a champion yet, and
Hmm.
you're from cold prospecting to close, it's all you. It's your strategy, your ability, your skills. Does that turn you
Yeah,
on?
yeah. And what I do is I take a lot of what I learn I'll incubate it for myself and I'll make it my own. And then I'll come back and that's just how I do it. So it's a blend of a few different things. And I really love doing it. I love the strategy behind all of it. And then actually going out and be able to execute against it and see it start to work, right? When you put a call plan together and you're sitting in there and you're in the room and I'm not usually the focal point of a meeting, right? Like it's about them. And if I've got somebody in there with me that's much more capable, if you will, to discuss customer experience or marketing attribution or something like that, we've already decided how and what questions we're going to ask and where we're going to drive the conversation. And to see all of that start to play out in front of you, and you're thinking, "Wow, this is exactly where I can go." And like we said, now I'm over there putting in my mind what are I thought these were the next 3 steps, so they just become even bigger than I thought it could be. Or are we where can we go? So I'm kind of
Yeah.
pulling levers sometimes in the background, but to see it coming to life when you've done that prep and that homework and you're utilizing the skill set that you've learned, it is it's really cool.
Yeah, because that's when sales became fun for me, was when the correlation of effort and reward got aligned. Because
Hmm.
too many people, early 20s, first 5 years of sales, working their butts off, effort, some reward. And they're not seeing either the correlation or what they're doing wrong, or not open to what they're doing wrong, or how they could do it better. And that person's just going to stay there. I think what you did really well is you wanted to become better.
Yes. What you just said goes back to what we talked about earlier. um, Reach out, like go out and find people like yourself. And if it's not you, there's other people out there that are
No,
willing
no,
to
it's just
spend their
me,
time,
just me.
just you, that are willing to spend their time to give you a little bit of advice. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be just your sales manager. I mean, I remember conversations with my first sales manager, and it was just kind of like, I'm not really sure what to say. Just go have fun with it. And I'm, my 20s, like, what does that even mean?
Mean,
Like,
right?
I don't even know what that means. Like, I've never sold anything in my life. Like, what? And I could have been in a lot different place had I picked this up sooner. But I've really accelerated, like put my foot on the gas over the past, 4 or 5 years, and that's been huge for
Yeah.
me. Is accelerating my growth. I
Yeah.
could read all these books by myself and try and learn all this stuff by myself, but that takes a lot of time,
Well, it's
right?
not just knowledge,
Yeah,
right? You have to be open to change. You have to assume you can become better. And a lot of people don't even accept that. They think, it's the situation, it's not me. Well, you have control over you. You don't have control over the situation. So
yeah, that's a
why
good
not
point.
change you?
Hmm.
And I think you have to start there because that's how you get better. If you look at all sports, they all have coaches. And the coach isn't trying to coach you to hurt your feelings or prove that he's better or she's better. They're trying to help you. And you can either accept it or fight it. But if you fight it, who's getting better? Nobody.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I'm really curious. Speaking of sports and then coaches, I mean, Michael Jordan had coaches and
They all
trainers,
do.
and his new documentary is coming out on Sunday, right, April 19th. And I'm really curious to see some of the behind the scenes on him and how Phil Jackson worked. What was that relationship like, right? And all of them, all of the Tiger Woods, all of the greatest, like you said, athletes have a coach.
Yeah.
And I was such a huge sports fan. I played sports growing up, and I still, I still do, and I still am a huge fan. And so, being able to take what you learned in sports and then translate it over to sales, it's kind of a cool parallel when you start to think about the two.
It,
You know,
it seems to be pretty consistent with the people I've talked to. They come
yeah.
from some type of thing where feedback, either sports, military, or performing arts.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
so
I didn't think about that.
yeah, so they're used to it as opposed to academics where it's more knowledge based. You pass a test,
Hmm.
right? And I think it's if you got to look at sales more like a practice, like law and medicine, you pass the test doesn't mean you can do the surgery, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, oh,
yeah.
don't worry, I've never done this surgery before, but I passed the test.
Could you imagine? No.
Okay, I
That's
never tried a murder case, but I got my bar exam, right? It's like,
us. You're spot on. That you just brought something up for me that's also helped me too. Get in the right mind frame is looking at this stuff like a murder mystery, or like you're a detective or something like that, and trying to piece all of that together.
yeah,
And when you start to think like that, it becomes way more fun. Um, and B, you really start to have some dynamic conversations with your customers and your prospects because you're in a whole other mindset, and you
yeah.
get them into a whole other mindset, which is
And
cool.
I have this discussion with at least one sales manager a day because they look at it as like all prospects are equal, and it's like,
Hmm.
how many deals do you need to do, right? Who's most likely to buy? You're a
Yeah.
detective. Who's most likely to have committed that crime, right?
Mhm.
Not everybody in that town, right? Who's closest to it? Who was there? Who had motive? All of these things kind of reverse engineer how to spend your time.
Hmm.
That's really all you have as a rep is your time and your skill.
Yeah. And as we go through this pandemic that we're in, right, and we move through this whole thing, a lot of companies are going to change, and a lot of stuff is going to come out on the other side differently. And so you're really going to have to, at least in my opinion, we're going to have to step back for a minute and understand what's going on at that company. Are they shifting their industry for a while? Are they shifting into something because what they were doing before it no longer exists or
Yeah,
isn't for a while? Like, so really using some of those, like we're saying, that detective work, to understand, okay, what's our story going to shift to?
right.
Because what stories are we going to go tell? So this is the biggest trigger event that's happened in the century, and we got to start preparing for what it's going to look like, this new world that we're going to walk into. And it might be temporary, and I hope it's temporary, but who knows how long it'll last.
Yeah,
I'm sure we
temporary
won't
is
be
a relative
quarantined
term.
forever, but yeah, I mean, once we're back out,
Yeah,
everybody's not just going to come outside
right.
and go back to the way
With
that
their
it was.
wallet. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
ready.
with their wallet. Hmm. Yeah. So how are some of these organizations that were really business to consumer focused and tourism focused and retail focused?
Yeah,
How are
event
their
focused.
customers reacting? Event focused, and then how are we going to be able to go help them?
Yeah.
And so everything's going to change, and that's where that detective type of mindset really will come into play, at least in my opinion.
Cool. Hey, and this has been a
Yeah.
fun conversation, Ron. Where can people go to follow you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can find me on there. It's Ron Massey, Masi, and please connect with me. I just changed over to a new company. I love talking to salespeople, marketing people, and we're doing some pretty cool stuff that can help there. So